It was night, and the streets of New York were glowing with lights. Giant billboards shimmered with brightness, the sounds of traffic filled the air, and cars rushed past in every direction. Amidst this chaos, there was a quiet cafe where Caroline sat by the window. A cup of coffee rested in front of her, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door. It seemed as though she was waiting for someone. Her face carried a strange tension and a hint of unease. Her heartbeat raced, and time felt like it had stopped. Suddenly, the cafe door opened, and Jason walked in. The moment his eyes met Caroline's, the world seemed to freeze. Jason's face lit up with a confident smile, and there was something magnetic in his gaze that went straight to her heart. Caroline held her breath for a moment. She wondered why an ordinary-looking man could stir her soul so deeply. Jason walked slowly toward her table and asked in a gentle voice, "Is this seat taken?" A faint smile appeared on Caroline's lips, and she nodded. Jason sat down. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was as if their souls were speaking without words. After a few moments, Jason lifted his eyes and said, "It feels like we've met somewhere before." Caroline looked at him in surprise. A wave stirred inside her, and she whispered softly, Maybe fate is bringing us together again." That single sentence sparked something between them, a flame that would never die out. After that night, a quiet connection grew between them. Jason felt that Caroline carried some hidden secret. She wasn't an ordinary girl. Her eyes held a pain, a sense of incompleteness. The next day, they met again at the cafe. Jason joked, "Seems like this cafe belongs only to us." For the first time, Caroline laughed freely. Her laughter carried a sweetness that touched Jason's heart. Gradually, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes they wandered through the colorful streets of the city. Sometimes they sat in Central Park and talked for hours. Yet every time, Jason noticed a faint sadness on Caroline's face. He felt it, but never found the courage to ask. One rainy evening, they stood outside the cafe as raindrops touched the ground and the air grew cooler. Jason suddenly asked, "Caroline, there's always sadness in your eyes. Will you tell me why?" Caroline was silent for a moment, her eyes glistening. Then she said, "I've lost too much in my life, Jason. Some wounds never heal." Jason gently took her hand. "Maybe I can't heal those wounds, but at least I'll never let you feel alone." Hearing those words, Caroline's heart softened. For the first time, she felt that someone was trying to understand her pain. Their lives slowly began to revolve around each other. Without Jason, Caroline's days felt incomplete, and without her smile, Jason's world felt empty. For the first time, Caroline's heart carried hope. But along with that hope came fear. The fear that this joy might vanish, that it too might be stolen from her. One day, while they sat in the park, Jason asked, "Caroline, what if life takes us on separate paths?" Caroline lowered her gaze. "Then maybe I wouldn't be able to breathe again." Her words left a deep mark on both of them. Evenings in New York became special for them. Sometimes they stood under the Brooklyn Bridge, gazing at the lights. Sometimes they walked hand in hand in the rain. For Jason, every moment with Caroline felt like a new world. One day, while they sat together in the library, Jason leaned closer and whispered, "Caroline, do you know? Your presence is the greatest joy of my life." Caroline looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes, but a smile on her lips. "And you are the support without which I would fall apart." That moment bound their hearts even closer. The words that slipped from Caroline's lips, "This is the truth I've been hiding from you," struck Jason's heart like lightning. Even the calm glow of the cafe lights seemed dim in that moment. Shock and concern were clear on Jason's face. "Caroline, what do you mean? What truth?" Jason asked softly, his voice trembling. Caroline lowered her head. Her eyes began to glisten. After a few moments of silence, she spoke slowly. "Jason, there's a past in my life that shattered me into pieces. I never thought I would tell anyone, but it's no longer possible to keep it from you." Caroline took a deep breath. 2 years ago, I was engaged. His name was Adam. Everything seemed fine. He was successful, handsome, and appeared to be a loving man. But within a few months, his true nature came out. He was quick-tempered and controlling. His love was a deception, just a facade. He broke my trust and crushed my dreams. Her voice began to shake. And one night there was an accident. Our car crashed. I survived, but he died. Afterward, everyone blamed me. His family accused me of being the reason it happened. From that day on, my world fell apart. Tears streamed down Caroline's face as she spoke. Jason looked at her in silence, waves of empathy and sorrow rising inside him. "Caroline," he said gently, "this wasn't your fault. Accidents are never in anyone's control." Caroline raised her eyes to him. "But Jason, you don't understand. Since that day, I've been broken inside. I'm terrified that if I let anyone close, they'll be taken away from me too. That's why I hid all this from you." Jason took her hands in his. Determination shone in his eyes. "Caroline, I don't know how much your past has hurt you, but I do know this. I will never leave you alone. I'm here, no matter what." For a moment, Caroline felt a ray of light in her heart. But the fear lingered. Could Jason really endure her pain? After that night, their relationship took a new turn. Jason was no longer just a friend or companion. He had become her anchor. He tried everything to make her smile. Sometimes he joked to make her laugh. Sometimes he took her to the city's brightest places. One evening, they sat by the Hudson River, where the lights shimmered across the water. Jason said, "Caroline, I want you to see life differently. It's not just about sorrow and memories. There's joy, there are dreams. And I want to share them all with you." Caroline's voice softened. "Sometimes it feels like you've come into my life as a miracle." One rainy night, they stood together on the Brooklyn Bridge. The air was thick with dampness and fragrance. Jason said quietly, "Caroline, do you know something? I've fallen in love with you." Her heartbeat raced. She stayed silent, tears filling her eyes. Jason took her silence as an answer and added, "If you need time, I'll wait. But the truth is, my heart belongs only to you." Caroline whispered in a trembling voice, "I'm afraid, Jason, if I let you into my life, fate might break me again." Jason stepped closer, holding her hand. "Caroline, love can't be built on fear. If we're going to be together, we have to face those fears." Their bond deepened with each passing day, but Caroline's heart wrestled with conflict. Sometimes she laughed freely with him, and at other times, she would suddenly fall into sadness. One day, while walking through Central Park, Caroline suddenly asked, "Jason, do you think the past will ever leave us?" He smiled and answered, "No, the past never leaves. But we can learn to live with it. And if we're together, every wound will heal." His words settled deep into her heart. Weeks passed, and their love grew stronger. But then, one day, there was a knock on Caroline's door. When she opened it, Adam's sister stood there. Her face burned with anger and hatred. "Caroline, you should be ashamed. Even after my brother's death, you've started a new relationship? You've forgotten him already." The words pierced Caroline's heart like a dagger. She stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. When Jason found out, he held Caroline tightly. "Let them think whatever they want. But I know you're not guilty. And you have every right to live your life." Caroline's voice shook. "But Jason, what if society never accepts us?" Looking straight into her eyes, Jason replied, "Love doesn't need society's approval, Caroline. All we need is each other." In that moment, Caroline realized Jason was more than her partner. He was her shield. Yet, deep inside, she knew the storm wasn't over. The deeper the love, the greater the trials. And their true test was only beginning. The darkness of night had settled over the streets of New York, but in Caroline's heart, that old light and ray of hope were still alive. Every meeting with Jason felt like a dream. But fate never offers easy paths. Caroline stood one evening on the balcony of her apartment, watching the rush of the city below. Suddenly, her phone rang. The number was Jason's. Her heartbeat quickened as she answered the call. "Caroline, we need to talk. It's something very important." A strange fear gripped her heart. What happened, Jason? Why does your voice sound so heavy? I can't explain right now, just meet me tomorrow evening at the same cafe where we first met. Caroline didn't ask further questions, though she wanted to. She knew the matter was serious. The next evening looked just the same as before. Caroline sat by the cafe window, waiting. Jason arrived, but his smile was gone. His eyes carried shadows of sorrow and burden. Caroline, I might have to leave this city. Her hands trembled as she heard this.
What? Why?
Why so suddenly? Jason let out a deep sigh. My company has decided to send me to Europe. It's the biggest opportunity of my career. But it means we'll be apart. Tears welled up in Caroline's eyes. So you're leaving? You'll leave me behind? Caroline, I could never leave you. But this decision isn't mine to make. That night they sat in silence, their hearts screaming while their lips stayed closed. At last, Caroline spoke. Love isn't always easy, Jason. Sometimes it demands sacrifice. But are we ready to make that sacrifice? Jason took her hands in his. If you promise to stay with me, I can endure any separation. The next day, Jason had to catch his flight. The airport was crowded, but for the two of them, time seemed to stand still. Caroline held him tightly and whispered, Promise me that no matter how long it takes, you'll come back. Tears glistened in Jason's eyes. I promise. Even if I go to the farthest corner of the world, my heart will always remain with you. The plane lifted off, and Caroline's tears fell freely. In that moment, she knew their love story was no longer just about joy. It had gained the bitter taste of separation too. Sparkle's end of part 3. This chapter reveals the hardest trial of their love, where a wall rises between dreams and reality. Months passed, seasons changed, and the streets of New York continued to shine with the same lights, but Caroline's heart remained covered in darkness. Every day felt incomplete without Jason. She often sat by the cafe window where they had first met, and every passing face reminded her of him. One evening, Caroline was sitting in her room surrounded by Jason's memories. On the table lay a picture of the two of them together. Looking at it, she whispered softly, I wish you were here, Jason. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message appeared. Look by the window. Caroline's heart raced. She pulled the curtain aside, and her breath caught in surprise. There, across the street, stood Jason. In his hands was a bouquet of roses, and in his eyes, the same old smile. Caroline rushed down the stairs and ran outside. As soon as they faced each other, tears streamed down their cheeks. They embraced, as though the walls of time and distance had shattered in an instant. Through her tears, Caroline said, You came back? I thought maybe this separation would last forever. Jason wiped away her tears and smiled. I promised you, didn't I? Even if I traveled to the ends of the earth, my heart would always stay with you. I've fulfilled my dreams and returned, because my greatest dream is you. Afterward, they went to the cafe and sat by the same window. This time, the silence between them wasn't of sorrow, but of peace. Jason placed his hand over hers and said, We've endured distance and pain, but from today onward, there will only be love. No more separation, no more barriers. Caroline smiled and replied, Love is never easy, but in the end, it always wins. Months later, their wedding took place in a small but beautiful church. Caroline stood in a white dress, Jason in a black suit, facing each other. When they promised to stay together forever, the church bells rang, as though the whole world was sharing in their happiness. This story reminds us that love is not only about smiles and joy, but also about sacrifice, separation, and patience. Yet in the end, if hearts are true, love conquers everything.